This is not a theory. It is not a philosophy. It is not asking you to agree with anything. There is nothing here you need to adopt, defend, or reject. It is a process you can notice while it runs. As you listen, the only thing to watch for is this. Are you allowing the possibility that what you're hearing could be true? Not that it is true, only that it might be. Think about the last time you had an argument, a disagreement, or a debate with someone. At some point, one of two things happened. Either you stayed inside the argument, protecting your position, defending your side, deciding quickly that the other person was wrong, misinformed, or lying, or even briefly, you stepped back. You looked at it from the outside and thought, is it possible they believe what they're saying? Is it possible this makes sense from where they're standing? What would have to be true for their view to exist at all? The moment you ask that question, something changes. Not agreement, not surrender, clarity. Most breakdowns don't happen because people are wrong. They happen because judgment happens too early. Something unfamiliar is heard, it feels threatening or frustrating. And instead of being examined, it is dismissed. Nope, I'm right. You're wrong, you're lying. That collapse feels like certainty, but it's actually interruption. This process does something different. An idea appears. Instead of deciding what it is, it first asks what it is not. Not to accept it, not to defeat it, but to remove misunderstanding. What it is not is tested and removed. What it is not is discarded again and again. If, after removing what it is not, something still remains, clarity begins to form. This is how truth is uncovered. Not by deciding quickly, not by winning arguments, but by allowing an idea to survive honest examination. This is the same process scientists use. If scientists collapsed every new idea immediately, if that can't be right, that contradicts what we know, discard it. Discovery would stop. Correction would stop. Evolution would stop. The same thing happens in conversations. The same thing happens in institutions. The same thing happens in lives. As you listen, you may notice something subtle. You might think, I can see how that could be true. Then, I can also see how it could be wrong. Instead of choosing a side, you stay with it a moment longer. If that happens, the process is active. If it doesn't, nothing is wrong. Here is the only question that matters. Not to answer, not to explain, just to notice. Did I allow this to be examined before I decided what it was? Most systems fail in one of two ways. They collapse too early and mistake dismissal for certainty, or they never resolve at all and mistake endless questioning for depth. This process does neither. It stays open long enough to remove what is false, long enough to see clearly, and then it stops. Not because someone insisted, not because authority intervened, but because there is nothing left to eliminate. That stopping point is an agreement. It's recognition. This is not persuasion. It is not debate. It is not instruction. It is the same disciplined process that allows understanding, correction, and evolution to happen at all. If listening to this reduced friction even slightly, it did its job. If it didn't, you lost nothing.
happens when systems stop questioning themselves. This is not about intelligence. It is not about bad people. It is about what happens when certainty replaces process. Every domain that advances human understanding relies on the same requirement: the willingness to be wrong long enough to see more clearly. When that willingness disappears, systems stop evolving and start enforcing. History shows this pattern repeatedly. In science, Galileo Galilei was condemned not because his observations were weak, but because they contradicted an accepted worldview. The evidence was visible. The interpretation was untouchable. When interpretation became law, science paused for generations. In medicine, Ignaz Semmelweis discovered that hand-washing reduced deaths dramatically. His data was correct. His conclusions were rejected. Why? Because accepting them would have required others to admit their understanding was incomplete. The result was not debate. It was dismissal. In psychology, Wilhelm Reich was silenced not because every claim he made was valid, but because inquiry itself became threatening. Instead of separating what was false from what might be true, everything was collapsed into rejection. Process was replaced by verdict. In religion and philosophy, Giordano Bruno was executed, not for disproving doctrine, but for refusing to collapse his thinking into one sanctioned frame. Plurality of interpretation was treated as danger in governance and justice. This pattern is the most destructive. When investigators, courts, or institutions decide what happened before examining all perspectives, truth is no longer discovered. It is selected. This is not justice. It is authority wearing certainty. The same failure appears in smaller systems. In education, when a student's question is labeled defiance. In counseling, when a client's experience is filtered to fit a diagnosis. In relationships, when intent replaces listening. In every case, the same thing happens. A conclusion forms too early. Contradictions are no longer examined. Alternative explanations are treated as threats. At that point, the system stops correcting itself. This feels efficient. It feels decisive. It feels safe. But it is false stability, because truth does not emerge from confidence. It emerges from elimination. Truth is what remains after false interpretations are removed. That requires process. Science requires it. Medicine requires it. Counseling requires it. Justice requires it. Civilization requires it. When thoughts become law, error becomes permanent. And when error cannot be corrected, collapse is inevitable. Not because people are evil, but because systems that cannot question themselves cannot survive complexity.
This is not about being stubborn. It's not about ego. It's not about refusing to learn. From the inside, it feels like responsibility. Things feel unstable. Too many opinions, too many problems, too many consequences if something goes wrong. Someone has to decide. Someone has to hold the line. Waiting feels dangerous. So a conclusion forms. It might not feel perfect, but it feels solid enough to stand on. It brings relief. It lets things move forward. The conclusion becomes how things are. People depend on it. Plans are built on it. Systems start running on it. At this point, reopening the question doesn't feel curious. It feels reckless. Questions start to sound like threats. If we look again, what breaks? If we hesitate, who gets hurt? If we admit uncertainty, do we lose control? So doubt gets pushed away. Not because it's wrong, but because it feels unsafe. New information shows up. It doesn't fit cleanly. It feels annoying, inconvenient, like noise. It's an exception. That's not the real issue. They don't see the whole picture. From the inside, this doesn't feel closed-minded. It feels like protecting order. And for a while it works. Things stay standing. Decisions keep moving, chaos is held back. But slowly something changes. Problems don't fully resolve anymore. Fixes don't last. The same issues keep coming back. The pressure increases. Defending the conclusion takes more energy than making it ever did. Listening feels exhausting. Explaining feels endless. Any challenge feels personal. This is the narrowing, not because the person is bad, but because the position no longer allows doubt. Eventually, cracks appear that can't be ignored. Outcomes don't match intentions. People are hurt. Systems fail in ways that can't be explained away. That's when a different question appears. Not out loud, often privately. What if I miss something? What if holding this line caused more damage than letting it bend? This moment doesn't feel freeing. It feels terrifying. Because rethinking now means admitting harm, admitting delay, admitting limits. It means letting go of certainty after everyone depended on it. Many people never reach this point, not because they can't, but because the cost feels too high. But when it does happen, something important shifts. The person realizes the danger was never being wrong. The danger was stopping the process that could have corrected it sooner. Certainty felt like care, but process was the real protection. Looking again doesn't destroy order. It prevents collapse. This is not about giving up authority. It's about changing what authority protects. Not being right, but staying able to rethink. Healthy systems don't avoid certainty. They delay it long enough to make sure it's earned. They ask simple questions, repeatedly. What else could be true? What am I not seeing? What would change this conclusion? Not once, not when things fall apart, but before the damage becomes permanent. From the inside, certainty feels necessary. From the outside, it can look rigid. The way forward is not shame, it's process. Because the strongest position is not the one that never questions itself. It's the one that can.
What it feels like to see it coming and not be able to stop it. This position is not chosen. It is not something you ask for. It happens when you can see something clearly and everyone else treats it like nothing. From the inside, it does not feel special. It feels terrifying. You see where this goes, you see what will break, you see who will be hurt. Not eventually, soon. But you do not have authority, you do not have permission. You do not control the system that needs to slow down, so you speak. At first calmly, carefully. You explain what you're seeing. That was Ignace Semoes. He saw women dying for no reason. He saw that washing hands stopped it. He wasn't arguing theory, he was watching people die. It didn't land. He was told he was wrong, that he was offensive, that he was accusing his peers, so he tried again. He showed the numbers. He showed the outcomes. He was mocked, dismissed, locked away. You speak again. You bring evidence. You bring patterns. You bring proof. That was Galileo. He pointed a telescope at the sky. The data was visible to anyone who looked. But the system had already decided how the universe was supposed to work. So the evidence became the problem, and he became the threat. From the inside, this doesn't feel like debate. It feels like watching reality get ignored. You push harder, not because you want attention, but because the gap between what you see and what everyone else insists on doing keeps widening. Now you're labeled emotional, unstable, dangerous. That was Giordano Bruno. He refused to collapse reality into one approved explanation. He wasn't proven wrong. He was declared unacceptable. He was killed. Centuries later, his ideas were understood. The damage was already done. From the outside, it looks like you're arguing. From the inside, it feels like shouting at a wall while watching a crash happen in slow motion. This is the position of the condemned. Not because they were always right, but because they were early in systems that could not stop. Eventually, one of two things happens. Either you are silenced, ignored, dismissed, pushed out, or you break. You doubt yourself, you go quiet. You learn to live with watching. And then later, sometimes much later, the realization arrives. The thing you warned about happens. People say we didn't know. There was no way to tell. The signs weren't clear. From this position, that moment is not satisfying, it is devastating. Because the signs were clear. And someone did try. The hardest part of this position is not being wrong, it is being right too early in a system that cannot hear it. This is why people like this sound desperate. Not because they want control, but because they see loss coming and have no way to slow it down. Healthy systems protect these voices not because they are infallible, but because early warning is information, not threat. When systems punish those who can see ahead, they remove their own brakes. Collapse does not arrive suddenly. It arrives after every warning has been dismissed.
How people in power get it wrong and re-rise too late. This is not about bad people. It is about a pattern that repeats whenever someone in charge refuses to look again. Here is how it happens. Someone in authority decides what is true. That explanation becomes the rule. Once it becomes the rule, questioning it feels dangerous. Not because the question is wrong, but because being wrong now threatens power, reputation, or control. So questions stop being treated as information and start being treated as problems. This is not new. History is full of it. A doctor named Ignaz Semmelweis discovered that washing hands saved lives. Women stopped dying. The evidence was clear, but the idea implied doctors themselves were causing harm that was unacceptable. So he was mocked, dismissed, locked away. Only later did medicine admit he was right. After countless unnecessary deaths, that is what happens. When certainty replaces process in science, Galileo observed evidence that contradicted the accepted model of the universe. The data was visible. The math worked. But the system had already decided how reality worked. So instead of examining the evidence, they punished the man. Science didn't advance until the system was forced to reopen. In philosophy and religion, Giordano Bruno refused to collapse his thinking into one approved explanation. He wasn't proven wrong. He was declared dangerous. He was killed. Centuries later, his ideas were understood. The damage was already done. This pattern is always the same. A person in power decides. This is how it is. New information appears instead of asking, "What am I missing?" They say that can't be right. That's not relevant. They don't understand. Once that happens, growth stops. This is how evolution stops. Not because new ideas are false, but because they are never examined. And this does not only happen in history books, it happens in justice systems when verdicts form before all evidence is considered. It happens in counseling when a professional decides what a person is experiencing instead of listening. It happens in workplaces when leaders protect their position instead of correcting mistakes. It happens in relationships when one person decides they already know the truth and stops hearing the other.
It happens in households when authority replaces understanding. At every level, the result is the same. People don't learn. Systems don't correct. Mistakes repeat. The tragedy is not being wrong. The tragedy is building a world where being wrong cannot be discovered until after the damage is permanent. Healthy systems work differently. They do one simple thing. They stay open long enough to ask what else could be true. That is how science grows. That is how justice works when it works. That is how trust survives when people in power refuse that process. Error becomes law, and law without correction is how the world breaks. Slowly, repeatedly, and everly.
What remains after certainty breaks? This is the part no system plans for. Not the decision, not the authority, not the certainty. What comes after? History has many names for this stage, different cultures, different languages, different domains. But they are all pointing at the same moment. The moment after. After the punishment, after the exile, after the sentence, after the diagnosis was ignored. After the warning was dismissed, after the door was closed and locked. This is where the system finally says we were wrong. Not quietly, not privately, but officially. And by then it is too late. In science, this moment is called error correction. In medicine, it is called iatrogenic harm. In law, it is called miscarriage of justice. In religion, it is called repentance. In philosophy, it is called tragic knowledge. In prophecy, it is called the fall. In plain language, it is called damage. This is not the moment of learning. Learning already failed. This is the moment of accounting. What was lost cannot be unlost. Lives are not returned, years are not restored, reputations are not rebuilt by acknowledgement alone. History is full of these reversals. People once labeled heretics, people once labeled insane, people once labeled dangerous, people once labeled immoral, people once labeled unscientific, people once labeled impossible. Later called pioneers, later called visionaries, later called ahead of their time, later called correct, but never called back. This stage is where institutions issue apologies, formal statements, committees, memorial, footnotes. This should not have happened. Standards were different then. We lacked the data. We acted in good faith. The aftermath is where intent is used as comfort, but intent does not heal outcomes. From the inside of authority, this feels like closure. From the outside, it feels like erasure. Those who are condemned do not experience vindication, they experience absence. The absence of the life they would have had, the absence of the years that were taken, the absence of trust. In spiritual language, this phase is called judgment. Not divine judgment, historical judgment. History does not punish, it records, and it records the same pattern again and again. Certainty hardens. Dissent is dismissed, correction is delayed, damage accumulates, recognition arrives too late. Every domain has its version of this story. Science calls it a paradigm shift. Religion calls it revelation. Psychology calls it reevaluation. Law calls it reform, medicine calls it updated guidelines, but the people affected call it something simpler. Why didn't you listen? The aftermath is where systems try to move on, but the consequences stay, not as anger, as inheritance. This is how trauma becomes generational. This is how mistrust survives reform. This is how warnings get louder next time. Not because people are dramatic, because they remember this lecture is not a condemnation, it is a boundary. It marks the line between correction and repair. Correction admits error. Repair would have required listening earlier. The aftermath exists because listening was postponed. Every time a system says, "We will fix this later," This is the later it creates. Nothing here is abstract, nothing here is theoretical. This is the residue of certainty, and it is the part that never gets erased.